To Long Box Diving, where we pull comics out of the long box. So I have another D&D video for you. And this is about an NPC that's actually come up in one of my games. I have not fleshed out their backstory. So, just for some context, this is an NPC named Terrance. If you've seen the Biting Frost, I think it's what it's called. It's one of the adventures in Explorer's Guide to Wildmount. In fact, I think it's the one that anybody can have. Um, and it's the one set in the north, the Graying Wildlands and Islecross. And that's the adventure my players are going through right now. And they come across a bunch of bandits, especially in that first section. One of the bandits we lovingly call Terrance because that's his name, and I came up with that on the spot. Because this is supposed to be a bandit. You're supposed to kill the bandits. Except this bandit, they did not kill, and they took along. Probably because this bandit failed breaking open a shutter that's meant to go outwards. He ran up against it, and it's supposed to go like that. Except he ran up against it and fell backwards. Why? Because he rolled a nat 1. So, because of that, because Terrance the Bandit rolled a nat 1 trying to open up a shutter, he's been taken along with my party, and he's with them on the rest of the adventure. From this point forward, if you're one of my players, you're not allowed to watch. You can't do this. No. Because it's going to have spoilers about Terrance, which I know you guys care so much about. And he's not crab fodder, for example. So, we're going to find out more about Terrance's backstory. I know this much. I know his name, Terrance. I know Terrance is an elf. I know that much, okay? I know he works for the Shady Creek Run tribes. I'm not super... I don't remember which tribe he works for. One of them. He works for one of the tribes. And he knows Tolgi, right? And I forget her sister's name. I'm sorry. It's been forever since I read that part. But we're going to find out what is Terrance's backstory. So, I'm going to go to the Heroic Chronicle over here. Right off the bat, we're going to start with Homeland. So, not everybody starts where they end up. Terrance the Bandit does not have to be from the Graying Wildlands, right? He could be. He might be from the Graying Wildlands, but we don't know. And that's the exciting thing. He's going to have a backstory now. Terrance the Bandit is going to have a family. And I'm going to find out what happened to it. Why did Terrance become a bandit? Robbing and breaking things. Terrance likes to break things, by the way, in case you didn't know that. So what I'm going to do, and I'm recording it over here, so hopefully it turns out well. With that, I'm going to roll 2d10s, because I don't have a d100. And I kind of want that physical roll just to have it and put it in post. Because that's fun. It's fun, right? And I actually get to roll my dice, which I love. I bought these from my local store, and they are my favorite pair, and I don't know if I will ever get another pair of dice unless these become cursed. In which case, I might. I might not. They're my dice. Actually, can you see this? Man, if it'll focus. I love these dice, dude. They're so cool. Alright, so 2d10. That's an 80. 88. 88? Alright, kids. That means Terrance the Bandit is from Jorhas. That is interesting. So what did Terrance the Bandit do to join the Shady Creek tribes and go from Jorhas to the Graying Wildlands? So Terrance the Bandit is from Jorhas. Cool. Now, I want to know his background. I mean, obviously he's a bandit now, but he wasn't always a bandit, right? he wasn't always raiding stores and breaking things and attacking old curio vendors, right? So, what was his backstory? And for that, I'm going to roll a d20, right? I want to find out what was his job. Because everyone has a job sometime in their life. They may have been a kid somewhere. But most importantly, this gets me allies and enemies. And for an NPC, having an enemy is really, really cool. Because if they bring along the NPC, well, that enemy comes along too at some point. Um, and of course, I have all the players, allies, and enemies, right? So I know mostly, and I'm just have to stay refreshed because I busy life, but I know mostly they're allies and enemies. And when would be a good time to pull them in? We'll see. But for this, I'm going to roll a d20 because it's going to find out Terrance's background. Let's move this out of my way. I don't know if we can see that, but that's a 10. That is a 10. Terrance was a hermit. Interesting. Terrance the Bandit was a hermit. Now, what does this mean? Right, so Terrance grew up in Jorhas, was a hermit. What does that mean for the characters and my players? How that affect their lives? Interestingly enough, it means he has one ally in the Kryn dynasty. So he may know somebody if they ever go to the Kryn dynasty, which odds are they probably will. At some point, if they ever go to the Kryn dynasty, well, Terrance knows somebody. And of course, it's up to the players to see if they ever want to pursue that or dig deeper or find out who does Terrance even know about anybody, right? But if they do, he has somebody. So we're gonna go ahead and make sure I write down that he has one ally. Let me pull up the chronicle here. One ally, and if you see, I have my other NPC I made earlier. I have no idea if I'll ever use them, but we'll see. I do know, however, I will use Terrance because Terrance is quite crucial to the current campaign. He's not. Terrance, we love you. Okay. So, so now that we know that, we have to know where Terrance the Bandit comes from. Also, because he's an elf from the Greying Wildlands, he is Drow. He's a Drow elf, which is something I did not know when I started out. And that is definitely interesting because he lives in a place where the sun shines. So that may come up at some point. It may not. But that may also explain why he's so terrible at combat, because he just lives in the sun because he's a moron. So that's something more I learned about Terrance. So we're going to find out where did he live. And so let's make sure that I have this up. Great. So you see all of these cities here are places he could have lived in at some point. He was a hermit, so we have to keep that in mind. We have to keep that in mind that he was a hermit, so he probably lived near the city, or maybe he lived in the city when he was younger and left. I don't know yet. So what we're going to do here is go ahead and roll a D100, which is just 2D10. So I'm going to take this out of my way. Go ahead and pull up this little guy. You see him? It's the one that looks like a top almost. I have to, for me personally, I have to equate them to shapes, because otherwise I don't remember. The D20 is fairly iconic, right? That one I use a lot. I know which one the D20 is. That's no problem. But you get stuff like the D10. I have no idea what the D10 looks like compared to the D8 or the D12. So I have to compare them to shapes. So this little guy looks like a top. We're going to find out what we get. So that's an 8. 85. 85. Alright, so Terrance lived in Roshana. That is not surprising if you know the Graying Wildland. No, excuse me, Jorhas. Almost everybody's from Roshana. That's interesting. So a drow from Roshana, probably fairly important in station at one point in life. Maybe Terrance's parents. Not necessarily part of a clan. Maybe I'm just brainstorming here. But maybe Terrance's parents, Terrance's family had something to do in importance in Roshana. That's where the important drow are stationed at. Of course, they could also just be servants. We'll find out. But it does mean that he went from living in Roshana to becoming a hermit to becoming a bandit, which is an interesting progression, right? So there's something in his life, and we're gonna find that out on this video. We're gonna find that out. But there's something in his life that caused him to go from living in Roshana, the biggest and most important city in Jorhas, to being a bandit in the Graying Wildlands, and not important at all. The sidekick to an adventuring party, right? We're gonna find out what happened to him, because that is interesting. So the next thing we have up, I already know his race. We're gonna find out his family. How many family members does Terrance have, if they're still alive, right? So the first thing I have to roll is a D100. Again, so that looks like a 50. 54. 54, he has 2 parents and 2d4 siblings. Cool beans. I'm just going to go ahead and write that down. I'm not going to change the camera because I have another thing to roll. We're going to go ahead and roll the 2d4. That one is not on camera. That looks like a 1. The D4 is hard to see on camera. That's also another 1. I don't like the D4 on camera. It does not show up. That's a bummer. But we do know Terrance has 2 siblings. Which is very good to know. I just wrote at siblings because I do shift for a lot of things, and I don't remember to stop holding shift. That is terrible, isn't it? Alright, so we know his parents, we know his siblings. Great. I now need to roll a D3. I do not have a D3 with me. But because I like rolling dice so much, I'm going to go ahead and roll my D4. If I roll a 4, doesn't count, right? So I may have to roll a lot if I get a bunch of D4s. Straightforward, that's a 1. So one of Terrance's 4 family members is important in his life for some reason. For some reason, I don't know what, but they had a big impact on him. And so we're going to find out what was that impact. What happened in that family member's life that caused him to either have a close bond or like a really deep grudge, right? Something happened, and that's what we're going to find out. So I'm not going to roll a D100 again. D10s. It's a little top guy. All right. So let's go to focus. Camera. That's a 9. The camera did not pick it up. That's a 0, so 90. Actually, no. Let's roll and get it on camera. That would be a 97. Again, you can't see it. Actually, you might. I might be able to rotate it and put it and fix it in post. But a 97. So this family member has loved you with all their heart and would do anything for you. You gain 1 ally. So me personally, and it doesn't say it explicitly, I like to very much make sure that I write down this. That when I write it down, I make sure that this is you gain 1 ally, family member, because I personally think it makes it more dramatic, thematic, whatever, when you describe their allies as specific parts of their lives. So their ally is going to be something special, give them something special, but making sure I remember that's their family member. Which family member is it? Terrance has 2 parents and 2 siblings. So let's find out. So I'm going to go back to the Heroic Chronicle over here. And Terrance has 2 allies. So this first one is going to be his ally because he's a hermit. So this is an ally that he acquired while being a hermit honestly, probably Terrance was a hermit in Jorhas and traveled to the Graying Wildlands in search of secret treasures. Yeah, so Terrance has heard lots of strange things going on in the Graying Wildlands. Who hasn't, right? Especially if you go to Isocross, lots of strange things are happening there. But Terrance has heard, hey, look, there's some stuff in the Graying Wildlands that's going on. If you can join with one of the tribes there, they'll protect you, they'll pay you, and you get to break things. You love to break things. So this is an ally he gained during his hermitage from Jorhas to the Graying Wildlands. So sometime during that, he made this ally. We're going to find it out here. That's a 30. 33. You are this person's favorite drinking buddy, and their home is always open to you and your friends. Well, look at that. Make sure I write it down right here, because I personally like to keep that together, knowing what their ally is. So that's interesting. I personally, yeah, you know what? I personally think that Terrance somehow sailed to Palebank Village, and this is what I'm going with. I'm changing it a little bit. So Terrance sailed to Palebank Village, and he has an ally in Palebank Village that he deeply cares for, and they are very good friends. They are drinking buddies, and this is his ally. So if you're one of my players, plug your ears. You're not supposed to be watching this video. What are you doing watching this video? I told you to leave. So I'm gonna go ahead and write this down because I like this idea and I think this works. So Terrance went to Palebank Village in search of treasures, mystery, fortune, whatever. Maybe he just wanted to find himself, and he's exploring the world. And good. So he left Jorhas. He left his family. He went to explore the world and find himself. Right. He landed in Palebank Village. He met Tolgi, the dwarf. The dwarf that is currently not doing so hot. She was the one who recruited him into the tribes, right? And of course, he was promised you'll just break things, right? You'll rough some people up, make sure they know you're the boss. Bada bing, bada boom, right? And he ended up agreeing to work for somebody that he truly did not know was part of the illegal trafficking that Shady Creek tribes are known for. For him, he's just a pawn, right? He breaks things. That's what he does. And his friend is Tolgi, the one who recruited him into the group. I want to make sure something before I say all this, because I may end up changing my mind. Yes. So it is Tolgi, and that's what I'm going to go with. because she's not the worshiper of Tiamat, right? Her sister is the worshiper of Tiamat. I think her name's Holgi. I might be wrong. Um, but Tolgi is just somebody who's there to make money and have a good laugh. And so that is also Terrance's specialty. He's not religious. He doesn't care about Tiamat. That would be his Tolgi's sister. So that's what I'm going to go with. His ally is somebody the players already know. Very, very cool. And that gives me ammunition, right? Well, not ammunition. That's the wrong word for it. That gives me a story beat, right? If the heroes don't act fast enough, and this again, spoilers for Frozen Sick. If you are intending to play it, or you have somebody who is running it, and you're just starting, probably want to hold off on this part. Although it is introduced fairly early on, so if you haven't reached it yet, you better hurry. But again, if you're intending to play it and you don't want to hear about this, fine. Skip ahead. I'll put a timestamp up here somewhere. That way you know when to jump to. So if they don't act fast enough, Tolgi is going to die of the frozen sickness. She doesn't have long enough, and if that does happen, well, Terrance is affected by that. Terrance will care about that. And so having that emotional beat I can have in my pocket for the moment, when they find out, that gives Terrance more emotion. He actually cares about somebody, and he's not just all about the heroes, even though the point is about the heroes, right? Giving them a chance to interact with Terrance in this way could be interesting. It could be interesting. We'll find out at some point. Alright, so this will be the time when I stop talking about that. Let's go back to Chrome here. We're keeping on going. I still have to figure out who's his family member that quite dearly loves him and why. So again, one more D100. That's a 50. 59. 59. Anybody have 59? What is that? That is cool. Cool. That is cool. So interesting. Okay. We may end up actually being able to use that at some point. I have ideas. Why did Terrance leave his home? Well, his family member that he bonded with, they bonded over a traumatic event such as battle or armed robbery. And this person loves Terrance with all their heart and would do anything for Terrance. That's interesting. Let's keep going because I have ideas. So we're gonna find out. I don't need to do this with. Well, that could be interesting. I'm not gonna do this with Tolgi because Tolgi is already a character in the book. I don't need to find out and flesh her out. She already has family. She already has a character. She already has stat block. I'm not gonna worry about her. I want to find out what is Terrance's family member. Do they have a fateful moment attached to them? Because that could be really powerful. We're going to roll another D100. Another one! That's a 30. Come on, get it on camera. There we go. 38. 38. Well, his family member is a druid. But that also means that they do not have a fateful moment. Which is a shame. That is a shame. Tell you what. I love Terrance. Terrance is my boy. Even though his family member doesn't have a fateful moment, I'm gonna give them one. I can do that. I'm the DM. I'm gonna give them a fateful moment. Alright, so for that, I'm gonna roll a D20. That's a 17. Interesting. What is a 17 do? Interesting. Okay. Okay. So, this is cool. This is cool. You were accused of a crime and exiled or imprisoned, regardless of whether or not you were guilty. Having spent time among criminals, you have proficiency in intimidation, and no thieves can't. Um, so this is really, really cool. This is really, really, really cool. Okay, so um, we're gonna say Terrance and his sibling. I don't know who the sibling is yet. I'm gonna figure that out in my own time. Find out a little bit more about their story. So Terrance and his family, his sibling, are lowborn in Jorhas. They're not in a clan. They're not part of a dynasty. They're not rich. Nothing like that. They're siblings of Druid. Um, and together they were attacked by and I think by a mysterious figure, um, clandestine operation that attacked and broke into Terrance's family home, right? Um, Together in this battle, a lot of family member, the most of Terrance's family were killed. Um, and the sibling in Terrance, the Druid sibling in Terrance, bonded and stuck together, and very much bonded over this event of you're my last living family member, and I would do anything for you, and I will protect you in any way possible. Um, it just so happens that they were attacked by and I forget what they're called right off the top of my head. Um, they were attacked because his family happened to be harboring an Ogden Trust. No, maybe. Yeah, they happened to be harboring a Cobalt Soul spy. So his father was very much one of those people who not super into the whole Luxon religion. Um, Felt that it should be studied more than it should be worshipped. And that sort of opinion isn't really well liked. But harboring a Cobalt Soul spy, well, that'll get you in trouble. Um, and the wrong people found out. Specifically, people in people in the government who would rather keep that kind of stuff a secret as opposed to um, publicly trying a bunch of spies and harborers of spies. They sought to keep that secret. Um, and of course, the remaining survivors were brought, and I think that includes the parents, right? Well, at least one of the parents, and I'll find that out. At least one of the parents survived. The siblings survived. Terrance survived, and they were interrogated. It came out that the parent knew all about the harboring of a spy, and the two kids did not. Terrance and his sibling did not know about the harboring. So because of that, They were not allowed to stay in the city. They were exiled, but they were allowed to live. Mostly because, well, can you actually prove anything was done? You can't. You can't prove anything happened that night. That house is already occupied by somebody else. You have no possessions. You are not important. We could kill you, but you would just revive, right? And be brought back in another. No, well, they wouldn't revive, would they? No, they wouldn't. Um, like they could have killed Terrance and his sibling, but they chose not to. For reasons that you're not going to be able to do anything. We don't particularly like killing innocent people. They're not like the security part of the government here, and I forget what they're called. I'll have to look it up at some point. They're not evil by any means, but this is a wartime, and harboring somebody of the enemy nation is a very punishable offense. So, exiled, he became a hermit, traveled for a while, kept traveling until he met Tolgi. Tolgi picked him up, and um, together he helped Tolgi as a friend at first, and soon as an employee, and then his life moved on. But that's interesting. So unless I change it, and I don't think I will, it means his family harbored a spy from the Empire. Although Cobalt Soul, not like our Agen Trust or Volstraga, um, but Cobalt Soul, his parents and one sibling were killed because of it. He was exiled, and his sibling was exiled. Um, Although where his sibling went, I don't know, and that could be something interesting. They may run into the sibling one day, but that's cool. Exiled because your parents did something wrong, even though you were innocent, you couldn't stay in the city. I like that. I like that. And that's Terrance the Bandit for you kids. He now has a story, a background, and a point in life. And I think that's all in the long box. See you next time. I should really stop touching my face. I keep scratching. It just... Next time in the long box.